Every so often, one has an opportunity in life to enter into a journey that totally touches and changes the heart. This is Ann Curtis, Sister of Mercy, and a member of the leadership team of the Institute of the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas. In January of this year, I had the opportunity to travel to Syria and Lebanon with its Sisters Delegation, sponsored by Catholic Relief Services, to learn about the Iraqi refugee situation. Our hope was to go and to sit with those who work with, who accompany, and Iraqi families themselves who have been displaced by the war, in order to help our constituencies here in the United States learn more and act in a way that would help relieve the suffering of those that have been so directly impacted by the war. So how did I end up on this delegation? Why Mercy? Why were we part of learning about Iraqi refugees? Our Fourth Institute chapter took a very public commitment to stand in solidarity with immigrant people. As well, in 2003, we as an entire Institute of Sisters of Mercy took a public commitment for peace against the war in Iraq. These things that we say are part of who we are converged in the invitation to be part of this delegation to learn about Iraqi refugees. The most overwhelming things that I experienced initially in the trip, when I first met Iraqis, was an intense feeling of shame and sorrow. Incredible sorrow at sitting face to face with the consequences, the human consequences of war. Millions of Iraqis have had to leave their homes because of the violence, and they are suffering now terribly as refugees. Close to 5 million have been displaced. About half are believed to have been displaced within Iraq, and the rest in neighboring countries of Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. However, the patience and the resources of the countries receiving refugees are running out. Their doors are closing. They're being woefully strained under the influx of refugees. As well, Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria already host cumulatively some 1.5 million Palestinians, and now thousands more from Iraq. The situation of refugees is woefully underreported in the U.S. press. We have heard very little about the trauma of the war and forced migration. Many live in horrible living conditions. The first family that I met lived in one room in a cement-type apartment. No heat, no electricity, no light, no window, with merely a couple of mats on the floor. It was a family of 8. One young man had suffered trauma to his head because of a car bomb. The father of the family had been detained and tortured. The 15-year-old daughter was suffering from type 2 diabetes. These refugees have no permission to work in the host countries. Children have limited access to education. They suffer from a multitude of health issues without access to health care, and then face a very, very restrictive and difficult resettlement process. One of the most heart-wrenching things I heard over and over again: no Iraqi that I visited with ever felt that they wanted or could return to their home country. Amazingly, in the midst of such incredible suffering, such great tragedy, women religious have stepped to the fore and are responding to need. We met strong, beautiful, incredible Dominicans, Good Shepherd sisters, Sisters of Charity, Lazarus sisters, who are opening their homes, renovating, rebuilding, incredibly creative in how they are trying to respond to the influx of refugees into their neighborhoods. Sisters are creating classes where women are learning new skills, new things to be able to bring income into their families. There are signs of life and hope in the midst of violence. Catholic Relief Services on the ground with their partners, Caritas, Migrant Refugee Center, the Sisters, the United Nations, other NGOs, many people of goodwill, and the churches are working incredibly hard and creatively to try to meet the needs of refugees. But even giving that, what about us? What about the United States? Whatever one might have thought of the war, there is no doubt that there are incredibly tragic outcomes. We do have a moral responsibility to respond and to help those who are suffering from it, those who have been forced to flee. We have an obligation to respond to this refugee emergency as individuals, as a community, and as a nation. What can any of us do? I think the first thing is to learn, to become aware. Become aware of whatever perceptions one might have with regard to, in particular, people from the Middle East. On the plane traveling from Jordan to Beirut, I discovered that the young man I sat next to was an Iraqi refugee himself, on his way to the United States. He said to me, "I believe that God brought us here together in this moment so that when you go home, you can tell your people they don't need to be afraid of us. I know how people look at us. It hurts me." We must pray. We must figure out how to live actually in solidarity with our refugee brothers and sisters. And then we can educate others. And we can advocate. What can we call our government to in terms of its responsibility in responding to refugees? I end with a prayer that one of the members of our delegation shared with us, and I offer it as you view some of the faces, some of the places that I saw. Oh God, who am I now? Journeying God, pitch your tent with mine so that I may not become deterred by hardship, strangeness, doubt. Show me the movement I must make toward a God not contained in heaven, but scandalously earthed, poor, unrecognized. Help me to find myself as I walk in others' shoes.